Therefore it says, wake up, sleeper. Get up from the dead. Christ will shine on you. So be careful to live your life wisely, not foolishly. Take advantage of every opportunity because these are evil times. Because of this, don't be ignorant, but understand the Lord's will. Saints of God, my eyes have seen the glory and the coming of the Lord. He's trampling out the village with the grapes of wrath of scorn. He hath loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. I see him in the watchfires of 100 circling camps. They have builded him an altar in the evening dew and damps. I can read his righteous sentence by the dim and flaring lamps. His day is marching on.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Conversation with Faith Leaders. This is Brandon A.A. Davis, the founder of Content Writing Service and Conversation with Faith Leaders. And I'm delighted to be able to share with you today a conversation that I think will be very beneficial, a conversation that has been in the making for a good while now. I have with me some friends of mine, some that I have recently met through a wonderful app called Clubhouse, and as well as my cousin, who I've known for a long time. Of course, he's my family. But I'm happy to have with me today to articulate this conversation, Dr. Juli McShay, Elder Darius Darling, Pastor Joshua Bingham, Minister Krystal Berry, and one of my good and personal friends, Reverend Raishera McCray. Welcome to the conversation, everybody.
Hello.
Some of you might be muted.
Good evening.
Listen, I'm delighted to have all of you here today. I'm so glad that your schedules allowed you to be with me today so we can have this conversation. Let me remove some branding here because it's blocking my cousin. I want you to be able to see this singer-songwriter here. So not to belabor the moment, I want to get right into our first conversation. And our first question is simply this. What has been your greatest appreciation about the Black church, and what has been your biggest disappointment? And so we can take advantage of this conversation and the time. Jump in where you fit in. Ladies first.
I would say my greatest appreciation about the Black church is its ability to love, but that can also create the biggest disappointment because sometimes that love can hurt and not everyone has the capacity to recover from it, to recover from that hurt. When people, quote unquote, love hard, or with criticism or with discipline. But I've been taught that criticism is a form of love too, because it stretches you and helps you grow.
All right.
So I have to say, for me, my greatest appreciation about the Black church has really been it's the history, it's the traditions, it's the way we're able to track our history, go back. And we're able to still carry some of the traditions along. The biggest disappointment is that our traditions are usually the one thing that's holding us back from being a little bit more progressive with society and where we are with a lot of different movements that's going on right now.
I think I would have to say,
right.
Probably my biggest appreciation is also my biggest disappointment because I'm grateful that in my like current years, in these later years, I realized that the Black church, realizes that worship or church is not done in a vacuum. With that being said, I think some of us still hold on to church being done in a vacuum, and it's being done. Sometimes it's being done in a vacuum outside of our walls, and then sometimes it's been done in a vacuum in our walls. So some of us have reached that point where we're able to see church go beyond that, but some of us are still stuck. So I guess it's those of us who have seen and who have gained perspective on church not being done in a vacuum, coming back and pulling the rest of us along to kind of get out of that. So that's for me.
I would say, from my perspective, um, I would say that one of my greatest appreciations of the Black church has been how resilient it has been, its ability to withstand um, almost anything that's thrown its way. To me, the historical nature, just the resiliency, the ability to really just to really be here is a testimony in itself. I think that its ability to endure political pressures, changes in society, changes in politics, and still have such a strong voice is one of the things that I love about one of my greatest appreciations, I think, of the Black church. I think my biggest disappointment would have to be what many of us have already said, has been that a lot of our traditions that have been rich in nature, that sometimes it's hard for us to pivot from things that we should have pivoted from in years and even decades ago. So that same pride that gives us this sense of belonging, that same pride that gives us this sense of who we are, can sometimes kind of backfire on us and put us at a place of where it's hard for us in the midst of that pride to pivot from some things that we should have pivoted from. So that's my 2 cents.
And I would have to say that for me, my greatest appreciation is it's on the ground leadership training. Whether good or bad, you're learning how to lead and how to grow and work with people. It's group development, group dynamics at its best, that at play. That would be my greatest appreciation. I think it's just really, really key there. When it comes to my greatest disappointment, I think it's been touched on a little bit, and that's social issues. I think the Black church is closed off to social issues in a certain aspect, especially when we get to a place where we assume that, or we'll just say prayer will fix it. What prayer can't do, it just can't be done. I understand that, but you have to pray and work. And I think that we have missed out on the second part of that. I also think another disappointment, I would say, may be platonic mentorship. There aren't many mentorship opportunities that people get into that's not self-serving a lot of times for whoever the mentor is. I just think that that's how I've seen it. Not all saying that all situations are that way, but I've seen a lack of platonic mentorship.
Absolutely. So all of you in many ways work within the church. Take a second and tell us what are your roles within the church, and what has been your most influential concern as you articulate what you do in the life of the Black church. And we can just go down the road. Dr. McShay.
Well, in our church, I serve in different ministries. I serve on our cultural awareness ministry. So bringing historical moments and displaying them for the greater body of our church. I also work within our women's ministry. But a lot of that has changed due to the pandemic, right? So I see ministry beyond the walls of the church. So that's what I do in the physical church. But beyond those walls, I serve our community. I'm an advocate. I'm an avid advocate in our community. I feed the hungry. I clothe those who are without. So, I live out the word of God, literally on a day-to-day basis. I treat people the way I want to be treated. There was a winter storm. I had electricity. I didn't just keep it to myself. There was someone who needed a place to stay. I opened my doors. So ministry, there's like the professional idea of ministry, and then there's the realistic day-to-day practice of ministry. And I pride myself in the latter, not to take away from the professionalism of ministry. But yeah.
Krystal, Minister Krystal.
So my current role at the church is ministry assistant to the pastor and to the executive director. And so, it's afforded me an opportunity to do what I love to do, and that's serve. I think one thing, though, if I had something to say about it, and it's not just particular to that context, but there's always this sense of having, it's such an antiquated conversation, but there's always this sense of having to prove myself. And it's not proving myself based on my abilities, it's proving myself based on my gender. And, again, it's such an antiquated conversation. And almost I've kind of acclimated to it, of sorts. It doesn't necessarily stop me. It doesn't necessarily, bother me in a sense where I cannot function. But I do kind of sometimes find myself having to prove why I am where I am. That makes sense? So, at the end of the day, God has graced me to be able to do just that, right? But I do it through service. I don't do it through, reacting to any type of comments or reacting to any actions or any type of gestures. I let my work speak for me. And for me, that has been rewarding for me.
Reverend Ray.
Currently, I serve as the youth pastor at New Philadelphia AME Church, and I think one of the things that I've learned in ministry, serving at with Reverend Walker, Darryl Walker for the last 3 years, is that we do not put an emphasis on youth ministry. We pretty much get someone that has been a teacher or who is willing to donate their time, and then just put them over the children. But I think now, as I desire to move further in ministry, I have a more of an appreciation for those who are considered a youth pastor. I wish churches would invest more in their youth ministry and really focusing on those who really have a passion for the youth and who really know scripture, who really knows the Bible, who has training in ministry, who have a desire to grow in the church. Because a lot of times, and this may get me in trouble, is that we use an older woman that is willing to sacrifice their time, and then they don't come as a youth minister or a youth pastor. They come as a mother to minister over young people, and that does more harm than it does good. So for me, I just wish churches would take more seriously and those who have a desire to be in youth ministry and really investing in youth ministry. I'm very, very appreciative of my pastor, Reverend Walker, who put me on salary with the church so that that shows that he's invested in the ministry, he's invested in his young people, and he's investing in my call to ministry. So for me, I just feel like, as a youth pastor and wherever the Lord takes me, I will focus more on making sure that whoever I have over my youth is not parenting. They're not parenting my youth. They're pastoring my youth. They're ministering to my youth. And the reason why I say that is, in youth ministry right now in today's day, you're dealing with young people who are struggling with their sexuality. They don't know which way. And I do not need to mother them. I don't need to parent them. I don't need to be the one talking to them and telling them how to live their life. I won't say how to live their lives, but how I would parent my children. I should not be a parent over them in youth ministry, but yet be a pastor and a leader and a guide to what they ought to do and what they ought not to do, not being a mother over them. So for me, that's really it. So that's one of the struggles I see in the church, is that I wish the church would focus and really invest in getting qualified, educated, trained ministers to be over their young people, and not just taking a volunteer for the sake of a volunteer.
Absolutely. Let me say real quickly that when it comes to the millennial work that we have here on this stage, all of you have brought to your context of ministry something more than just your youth and your wisdom and your new vision of how to do ministry, but you brought the certainty of leaders who can trust you and who can depend on you to do what you're called to do and what you said you're going to do. Raishera serves as the youngest, I believe historically, the youngest appointed person to serve as the treasurer for an Episcopal district in the AME Church. That's something, and she serves in one of our major districts, which is the 5th Episcopal District, which has 17 states. So Bishop Clement Few presides over 17 states, California being one of them. And because of her background in finance, he appointed her to be the district treasurer, and she's doing a marvelous job. So congratulations to you. Always proud of your work. Pastor Josh, tell us what you do. We know you're a pastor, but tell us what you do and how does your work in the Black church culminate with you being a millennial?
Great discussion. So I am a pastor, but I'm also a consultant to a lot of different ministries as well. I think that from a millennial aspect, this kind of millennial movement that we're in, many of us are serving in capacities in other ministries that we have not traditionally served in our local ministry. So definitely a pastor from even a local context, but virtually as well. But I also serve as a pastoral consultant to a lot of different ministries. Really dealing with consulting and developing young ministers, not just in their Christian experience, but also developing them in their preaching gift as well. I think for me, it's a little bit about what I do. I think for me, the challenge has been within the context of the Black church is oftentimes having a funnel system that we can direct people to be effectively mentored, and also opening our understanding. And the reason I led with the fact that I'm different things to different churches and ministries. I believe that we have to open our understanding of the church and even the kingdom of God to where we recognize that things don't have to be in-house for us to have access for them. I can bring in a consultant. I can bring in people that will assist in a specific area of my ministry. And so for me, the biggest challenge has been ministries that think that they have to have everything in-house. And that's not always the case. You can actually bring in somebody who is equipped in that area to be what you do not have, instead of trying to wing it, instead of trying to, build something random. I think that the challenge here for me has been going into ministries and dealing with ministries and saying, okay, we're going to need someone that is able to at least able to teach young ministers how to prepare a sermon, right? Because that might not be the gift or the call of the ability of the senior pastor, and we don't have to build it. We can actually bring somebody in that can do it and can help and assist. For me, the challenge has been opening our understanding of the church and the kingdom of God from a perspective to where people don't have to be our members to be a resource unto us. And I think that has killed a lot of us and really has become an obstacle to a lot of our development because we have this mindset that if it's not in-house, I'm not going to use it. If it's not a member of my church, I'm not going to pay it and stuff like that. The reality is you got to do what's best for you. We don't say that. We don't say that when, if the plumbing in your house break down, if somebody, you're not saying I got to find somebody in my family. If you got somebody in your family to fix it, that's fine. But listen to me, you're more concerned with getting it fixed. And I think that for me, one of the biggest challenges has been, it's really opening our understanding to this reality that people can be different things and different resources to different places. And we have to have this lordship mentality over people, and we can really grow our ministries in a very effective way. I can bring in people to do, etc., whatever it may be. So for me, that's the biggest challenge, right? Really stretching our understanding of church, of the kingdom of God, to really get to the place of where having access to resources, and which is the greatest resource is people, and those people don't necessarily have to look like me. They don't have to be from my organization. They don't have to be from my denomination, but they may have something that I may need, and it will behoove me to really tap into that resource, because it's going to really help to do, help me to be whatever God has called me to be, and help those that I lead. And I think that's the biggest thing, right? What does my constituents need? And if I cannot provide it, if it's not my skill set, should I wing it, or should I bring somebody in, that has the ability to do that? So those are my thoughts.
Elder Josh.
Yes, sir.
Well,
excuse me. Darius, I'm sorry. I'm looking at Darius, but I called your name.
It's all good. No, so in ministry, I am a music minister. I work for my church, New Zion Tabernacle in Fort Wayne, Indiana, as the minister of music and director of music programming. So I do song selection, musicians, all of that. But I also serve at another church in town in Fort Wayne as their praise and worship leader. So a lot of things that I do in ministry are centered around music, but I do preach and teach and run Bible study from time to time when asked, and those type of things. I also oversee some special projects at our ministry as well. So coordinating with vendors and getting things done around the church, especially with upgrades and those type of things. So making sure that we can do what we need to do around the ministry, especially now that in Fort Wayne, ministries are starting to open back up, and the city's starting to open back up. So we want to make sure that our facility is available and top shape for people to come in, and we're doing what we need to do. So I can help to oversee that leadership team as well. I think one of the challenges that we face and that I face in seeing in the music area is that we think ourselves a little bit higher than where we should be, or a little bit further along than where we are. And I think this is for some ministries, this is ministry wide. We think we're further along than where we are, and we have to take a realistic perspective of we just getting up and yelling and screaming in the microphone is not music, or it's not production, or it's not it's not positive. It's just we're making a lot of noise. And the thing is, where I come in and what I try to do is bring us to a place where we recognize where we are, and then we grow from there. The growth process may be quick, depending on the willingness of the people. So my primary responsibility is to make sure that we're creating an atmosphere where people can hear and people can experience God on another level. My job is to tear down the walls, or at least start chipping at the walls, so the pastor can come in and hit it with a bulldozer. But what I tend to find is that there's a lot of, within music departments, there's a lot of people who don't seem to want to be pushed or challenged. They just want to get up and sing and make noise. Bible says make a joyful noise, but you just can't get up there making any type of noise. And I think where we miss it so many times in our music departments is that we just allow everybody and anybody to have voice in what happens in a music department, when we have to really take a deep dive into understanding what is the vision of the pastor for the church, what is the vision for the pastor for the music department, and then how do we make that happen? And then additionally, if the pastor is looking to grow the church, how is the music and the pastorate, how are those offices working together to do that? And so that's what I do. I do a lot of consulting with different praise teams and music departments, just to make sure that they're on the same page and try to help iron out differences and work to move the team in the right direction. So
awesome. So let's go ahead and push the envelope a little bit. I want to ask this question, and I'm hoping that all of you will answer as honest as you know how. And I'm going to direct this question to Juli. Juli has quickly become my favorite conscious-minded sister, and she's like family already. So Juli, go ahead and push the envelope, because you're going to help us to be better. Do you feel the mission and organizational ideology of the Black church is relevant today? Go ahead and say hallelujah.
I was on mute. I said, say that again.
Do you feel the mission and organizational ideology of the Black church is relevant today?
Do I feel the mission and ideology of the Black church is relevant today? So that's a yes and no. Yes, it is, but no, it's not, because the Black church has not been showing up the way that I believe that it can and that it should, and the way that it has in the past. I think the church has become, in many spheres, too capital minded. And can we come back all together? I like looking at y'all. I'm sorry. But the church is too business minded and not enough kingdom minded in terms of the people outside. We're so busy trying to be into branding. And don't get me wrong, branding is totally important. And by the way, I love the branding here on your in your studio, your virtual studio. But we have to get back into the communities and penetrate the people. And I don't feel like the church is doing that consistently enough. It should not take a pandemic for you to show up. And definitely you don't have to show up with cameras in tow. Okay, I'll leave that alone. But show up and do the work, because here's the thing. When you do the work, other people become your marketing. You know, other people become your brand ambassadors, because now they're talking about the good things that you are doing, you know. So I think the church, this is an opportunity for the church to get out of its own way, so to speak, and to step up and really serve the kingdom of God. There's I was looking for this tweet that I wrote. Here it is. I'm sorry. I wrote during the Skip did that special on PBS, right? And it was about the Black church. And one of the highlights was about the role of the Black church when it comes to being activists. And so here's my position on that. Activists are missionaries. Missionary work is activism. Social justice leaders and organizers are disciples. We are empowering God's people. This work is kingdom building. And I truly believe that. However, I don't see enough of the church, quote unquote, out there doing it as ministry, as missionary work. What I see is a few, and then those who aren't doing it, they're looking at those who are, and they're being very critical. Many of the biggest activists today on a national platform are people who are not traditionally accepted in the church. And I'll just go ahead and say it. They're LGBTQIA, right? But they're out there doing the work that the church should be doing as well. Because I don't say Black Lives Matter with an asterisk, right? I say Black Lives Matter, and that's everybody. But too many of us are applying an asterisk. And I believe that the church has an asterisk when it says it sometimes, you know, or some churches, I should say, some pastors, some congregants. And we don't have time for that. We are literally, it's the kingdom versus the empire in a lot of sense. And too often the kingdom is trying to be the empire instead of trying to be the servant, instead of being Christ-like when it comes to certain issues. And that bothers me. I've heard people who have very dominant voices, very influential voices. You know, they criticize somebody. Well, they don't believe in God, but they out there looking like them. They might not believe, but they out there serving his people. They're out there rescuing people. They're out there serving people. They're out there advocating for people. So as much as they may say they don't believe in Jesus, he's not their Lord and Savior, they are living like him. What are you doing? And I want more of that. I want more of us to look like God, you know, look like Christ, be out here doing the work, be out here serving the people, not for the celebration of it, but because it's what we're called to do. I think back to Matthew chapter 6, you know, you can't be like, oh, I fed the hungry today. Like, No, you don't need a picture to prove that. You shouldn't be the one posting that picture. Let's a passerby catch you doing good. But we have gotten into the church got to get out of this selfie, look at me position as well. And I'm gonna be quiet before I get in trouble.
No, Julie, I think you own to something. I mean, I think there's just so much that happens that I really don't think that most pastors or leaders have an idea of what the kingdom really is. I think we get confused, and I'll just lump us all in, and that way I don't feel like I'm singling out anybody. I think we get confused when we talk about kingdom work, but we only focus on what we're doing. We're not reaching outside of our four walls, the four walls of our church, or outside of our denomination to partner, or outside of our reformation to partner with other ministries to do the work that needs to get done. I think we do have a call. Our local church has a call. I do believe that our local church should have a mission and a vision and understand where your niche is. But just because that's your niche doesn't mean you can't help somebody else. You can't offer volunteer support and take a lesser seat at the table than someone else just to help support the work that's going forth. I think we talk a lot of kingdom, but do we really understand it? Do we really understand that it takes us stepping back and putting God up front? And it doesn't matter if your name is on the marquee, doesn't matter if your logo is on the flyer. It doesn't matter if people are calling your name in the press release. It does not matter. Is the work being done? And if we're getting the work done, let's give God glory and move on.
That and to your point, I would just jump in and say that, I tell people all the time, sometimes we can get so caught up in the business of the church that we forget the business of the kingdom. And a lot of times in terms of, relationship, from an organizational structure, Christ is the head, right? But then from a missional, we're talking about missional theosis, or we're talking about mission of the church. One of the things that made Paul so effective was that he was concerned about the relationship between churches. And if we spend all of our time being competitive instead of in Christ, we'll never be able to come together and really essentially be what heaven is going to look like, you know what I'm saying, in terms of mission. And so sometimes we miss it because we're all different. Like, we all bring something to the table, but we can be uniform. We can be unified and not be uniformed. But that does not mean that differences have to create dysfunction. So I think sometimes having that relationship between church, again, Paul was concerned about that. He was concerned about, the Philippian church. He loved them because they shared in the gospel with him. They shared in taking the gospel out to the streets. But for us, again, we're so competitive about stuff within our own culture. We can't worry about what everybody else got going on because we got to worry about ourselves. You know what I mean? So I think, I guess for me, just being able to support one another. I love the Black church, right? I love it. But I think from an organizational point, if we're talking about, we have, Christ as the head, I think we got that, most of us, I think we got that down pat, right? But I think the other part, that missional part, is that's something that we're still trying to flesh out. We're still trying to get that together.
But also to piggyback off of what you just said, is that I think the reason why I struggle with how progressive is the Black church on point at this moment is that it's like these movements that's going on social media. It's kind of like overshadows the ministries that are trying to do the work. Like I learned recently that there's a pretty preacher movement, and I was like, what's a pretty preacher movement? And it's the women who believe in their heels high, the long weaves, and the fitted clothes. And granted, I love being cute and preaching, but it's like, why is that a movement? Like, why can't you just go
my God
and keep it moving? Like, that's it, period. And it's like you listen to this and you're like, what's going on? Or it's so many different movements. It's so many different like fads. And it's like we're coming for people. Like I was listening to Juanita Bynum coming after that Lisa lady, for what she said. And I'm like, first of all, why do you have time to come after Juanita Bynum? Like, why why do we have time in this day and age to comfort anybody? Why are we worried about how high somebody's stilettos are? Why are we worried about like is your dress fitted or is it loose? Like, why is that a concern? I feel like that is my biggest issue with the church right now, is that everybody's worried about who's getting the money, who's securing the bag, who's going to what church, like who got a haircut. You know, did Reverend Brandon slick it back, or did he go to the side this time? Like, everybody's worried about the wrong thing. Like, we're not worried about
Really, Raishera?
I love
really?
him. I love him, y'all. But I was gonna make a joke.
But y'all, can I tell you, Raishera, to your point? Can I tell? And I mean to interrupt you. Can I tell you to your point? When I was formerly a pastor's wife, and can I tell you that now, mind you, we got to that church when we were Black church. We got to that church when we were maybe like 24 years old or something like that. So we were super, super young. And that's one of the critiques I have about the Black church is don't call a young pastor if you don't want him to make mistakes. Please don't call him. Okay. If you're gonna call a young pastor, you know you had to get or let that man mature. No, he's not gonna do everything right. But if you want him, then you have to work with him. Don't call him if you don't want him to mature. But that's another conversation. The other piece of the conversation is there were moments, y'all. I had a woman write me a letter because I had on some Louboutins, and she told me in this letter, y'all, this was another Black woman, older woman. She was old enough to be my grandmother. She told me that I looked like a streetwalker, and that no woman who was married to a pastor's wife had any business with heels that high on. And if I wanted to know what a pastor's wife looked like, I needed to talk to his grandmother. I mean, you know,
she would have called me a Jezebel then.
I changed my hair. One time I changed my hair color. She told me my hair color was inappropriate. I mean, it was just so much. So, you know, again, like you said, you're being able to focus on focus on the necessary. Y'all so consumed with stuff that don't even matter. You know, why do you care what kind of shoes I have on? Love me for where I am.
That's that criticism again.
Or why?
That's what I open with. That criticism.
Get your feet together so you can have on the same shoe. I mean, figure it out.
Why is everyone up in arms because Leandria decided to post a picture with a sheet with like a towel across her? Like, why are y'all up in arms? Like, you all are just giving energy to things that are unnecessary, and we wonder why the young adults, the millennials, are going to the more like the multiracial, what's it called? Interracial, multiracial, whatever the terminology is. They rather go to the churches where they can wear jeans and t-shirts and their kids can run crazy in the back in the on the playground while they're in church, and it's not the traditional hymns and the traditional gospel music. We wonder why our young adults are leaving the traditional Black church or just the typical Black churches to go to, you know, the Hillsong churches. I don't know what the right names are, but they would rather go there because they feel included, they feel a part, they feel like they can be themselves. But yet we're so concerned about what someone posts a picture with a sheet across them. Like, my whole thing is, I don't see no nips. I don't see anything that's like, I don't see a part of her vagina. I don't see any of that. Like, why are we so concerned about the little, like the carnal things? Like, we can be.
I can answer why.
Go ahead.
The why is because a lot of us are covered up, but our secrets are still out.
Yo, okay. So let me say one thing right quick, and I'm gonna be quiet after this.
My God.
This is, and I posted it on my social media, and I don't think people really understood what I was saying, is that that photo, right, Leandria posted. My only reason for not wanting to post something like that on social media has nothing to do with conviction. It has to do with the fact is I don't want to deal with y'all having so much to say about what I post. So me posting has a lot of things on social media or saying how I really feel has nothing to do with conviction. It has to do with what people are going to say or the reactions others going to say. So what I teach my young people is, I teach them, I said, you know what, move off of your conviction
and not your fear of others. Allow the Holy Spirit to convict you in what you're doing and not your fear of what man is going to say. Because if you fear what man is going to say, they're going to control every aspect of your life. But if you move off of the conviction of the Holy Spirit, that is what's going to guide you in what you do, what you say, what you dress. And so therefore, I can't remember your name in the yellow. What's your name one more time?
Juli.
Juli, like that's why what you just said just rang a bell with me, is because you hit it. We were hiding, we've hidden those things. And so we look like we present ourselves a certain way so people can respect us and people can think of us as holy, but in really behind closed doors, we're just a bunch of hellions. So
Absolutely.
Josh and Darius, you guys been very, very quiet.
Man, I've been listening.
Pastor Josh, I know you guys. Listen, I need to hear what you got to say. Man, come on, Pastor Josh, I need to hear.
I've been listening. I think to your question, is the mission still relevant? I think before you even get to the mission, I think our problem, you guys have kind of alluded to it. I think our problem is not so more the mission of the church as opposed to what we should be doing in society or the world. I think the crux of our problem is very simple. And I think that we have moved from, and I know sometimes it's very cliche to say, that we have moved from really the tenets of Christian conversion, authentic relationship with Christ, really building a solid foundation, not only with God, but with your brothers and sisters. So how can we be mission oriented when it comes to being directing that energy outside the context of our circle, our church or whatever organization, whatever we want to call it? When in reality, we are not building successful Christians. I think our problem is that if we can correct the issue, the virus, we can correct the symptoms. The symptoms is the things that, we worried about who posted this picture. We worried about this video. We worried about this. We worried about that. We worried about that. We're all over the place because we really don't have a solid foundation in our Christian faith. If you would just start going around any church and start asking questions, I think most pastors would be surprised how many people do not read their Bible. And I know this sounds old school, but it's really the crux of our problem. And so, I think that our mission is still very relevant, but I think that before we can even attach the mission, before we even get back to walking in our purpose, our foundation appears to be cracked, in the fact that, man, people really just don't love God. He's not a priority. You go back to 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, there was a priority on God. There was a priority on Christian service. There was a priority on the Black family going to church. And, it wasn't no discussion. It wasn't you didn't feel like it. What you mean you don't feel like you're going? So, I think as we have moved from placing God as our priority, I think what has happened is that it has caused kind of this cataclysmic earthquake throughout our faith from a Black context perspective. That's why we see so much foolishness. That's why we see so much fun poked at ourselves, because we're like, man, we can't believe some of the stuff we're seeing, because, man, people really do not prioritize God that they've done. So I think that, and so this is why we get frustrated when we start to try to address the mission, because we have not prepared people to be people that are sound enough and strong enough in their Christian identity to even have the ability to approach the mission. The mission is for soldiers. The mission is for those of us that are mature in faith. The mission is for those of us that can put on the armor of Christ. But how can I implore you to fight a battle and you have not become a strong soldier in the army of Christ? So I think that most of our problems oftentimes, I think we bump our head against the wall because we're trying to get people to be mission oriented when in reality they know very little about Christ. I mean, take a poll, go ask some questions, go ask some questions. Some of these folks can't name 3 disciples. Some of these, listen to me, we're not reading, we don't have authentic prayer lives. And I sound like I'm an old 75.
No, you're sounding good, man.
But there's part of me is that's how I was raised, man. So we're not strong enough to be mission oriented. I can't go into an army if I'm not prepared to go into the army. And I think that and therein lies a lot of our problems. I believe that we can start building stronger Christians. Now, in fact, we can say, hold up, now the mission of the Black church, the mission when it comes to serving our communities, to being great assets to the communities. Because this is the reality. How can you help somebody and you can't help yourself? You know what I'm saying? We're trying to help families and our families are tore up. You know what I'm saying? We're trying to help the world, and we have so many different issues. But I just wanted to bring that into the context of our discussion. I just think that at our core and at our foundation, we are at a place to where many churches are in crisis. And because of that crisis, a lot of us have moved and compromised. And I'm not talking from a legalistic type of view. I'm just saying from, it don't matter. If you don't know if you don't read your Bible, it don't matter. Just come to church on Sunday. If you don't pray, that's okay. Just come to church. You'll be all right. No, we should be saying, no, you need to pray. No, you need a relationship with God. No, it's not enough for you to get your spiritual content from memes on social media and sound bites from your favorite preacher. You're going to have to study to show thyself approved. So let me stop talking because I start sounding like an old bishop and folk get mad. So those are my 2 cents.
Josh, Josh, thank you for what you just said, man. I appreciate it. Let me highlight the fact that my mom is watching, and my mother has become tech savvy because she's raising my 2 nieces, her and my dad. And homegirl is enjoying the conversation. I mean, she's on Facebook putting up hearts and she's been putting up comments. Hey, mama, I love you so very much. Can't wait to come see you again. Listen, Darius, take 60 seconds and jump in here. I want to make sure I get to question number 3 because I want to make sure that I take advantage of our time together. Josh, 60 seconds. What are your thoughts about question number 2? And I'm gonna put it back up on the screen.
All right, so I think and let me take this to a corporate perspective really quickly and I'll bring it back. A lot of companies have very good missions, but if you don't employ the right people, you're not going to accomplish it. And I think that's what's happening with the church. The church, the Black church overall, has a very good mission. We're doing like the work at the core, at the crux, at the foundation of what we want to do as a Black church is spot on. I think what's happened is we've employed some of the wrong people, or we have not done the right training through our HR departments to get these people where they need to be so they can do the right work. When I think of we turn our ideology into action, right? So we have to have an opportunity to put our thoughts and our mission, everything that we've written down on paper, into action. And if you don't train people the correct way, as Josh was just saying, if these people ain't studying, if your people ain't attending Bible study and Sunday school, what is happening? All they're doing is coming to get a nice hot scream and holler on a Sunday morning, and that's it. And they go back into living their life the same way every day. It's the concept of insanity. They're doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting to get different results. All they're doing is come to church on Sunday morning and getting a nice little holler, and then going for the rest of the week and not knowing anything. So I think one thing that happens is we don't have the right people, and because we have hurting people in positions, those hurting people are hurting people. And they're causing there to be so much animosity and division within the church itself. And it doesn't have to be like that. I think I don't think the problem is the Black church. I think the problem is the rhetoric of the Black church people who are attending the churches and are not putting the truth of the mission behind what they do. And I think that is extremely frustrating to those of us who want to get it right, who are out here trying to do the work, who are trying to really make sure people understand that the Black church is still relevant and still brings so much power. I love what was being said earlier about the multicultural churches. What happens is we have all of these, we have dismissed the needs of the young for the sake of tradition, and they go and get their needs met elsewhere, when in all actuality, the Black church was meant to provide and to fill those needs. I really think that we have an organizational issue, but I think the issue within itself, not an organizational issue, I think we have a people issue. I think the issue itself is the church people and not the church at large.
Yeah.
So let me take advantage. Go ahead, Julie. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I feel like we do have a generational gap where we want to convict people and persecute people instead of convince them and mold them and promote them and be an example to them. We rather just, take out the whip and be like, you wrong. And no, like, people are human.
Well, Julie, we can't clean up what's not in the house. You can't go out and expect to clean up something in the street if you don't bring it in where you have the proper tools to clean it up.
Right.
And the church is not, but when we treat the church like a museum instead of a hospital, that's what happens. I don't need you to come to church and have it all together. As a matter of fact, I'm showing up to church every Sunday because I'm trying to get it together too. So if I treat the church like a museum, then that's exactly what I'm expecting from somebody else. Right. Treat it like a hospital. I won't treat it like a hospice, but I will treat it like a hospital because I want you to get better.
Yep. And I think what happens is we're not that transparent. Leaders, we're hurting too. We come into church because we hurting. The reason why most pastors are sitting in worship during worship is because they trying to get their feel from God too. Just as they have to release a word, but they still need to be healed. They still need to be made better. So I think what happens is we lose out on that transparency of ministry because we're trying to uphold the museum mentality, and we're so sacred, we're so holy. We got this pomp and circumstance, these big old dresses, or as most people say, robes and stuff like that. You got all these men and women in these big old dresses, but what's up under that? What's in your heart? Pretty gowns and the pretty gowns. We gotta do better. Whether it's purple, red, green, blue, black, yellow, whatever, we have to make sure that we're speaking to hearts. But again, you can't clean up what you don't bring in. So you always want to talk about everybody else's this, that, and the other. Well, why not invite them in and welcome them in? Let them come into a place where they can be taught. You don't have to teach them like this. You teach them by showing them the love of Christ.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Listen, I want to take advantage of, we just got just a few minutes left. And I know some of you have other work that you have to do today, which we'll be joining. Listen, if you're not on Clubhouse, I want to encourage you to get on Clubhouse. Forget the nonsense that you've heard. There's some real conversations that is being held by the people on this platform. I've met Juli and Darius through Clubhouse. I knew of Krystal because we have a mutual friend. And me and Raishera are long-standing friends. Over a decade. That's my girl. And Darius is family. That's my cousin.
Josh, I love the fact. Josh, he just can't get us right for the life of him.
He can't get y'all right for nothing.
He did it about
I can't get y'all right for nothing. Darius is my cousin. Listen, the Lord is saying Josh is family too. That's what the Lord is saying.
That's what he's saying.
That's it.
I think he's saying you need to go get your ass checked.
That's what
Josh got a little bit more hair than I got. Josh got a little bit more hair than I got, Reverend. Just a little bit.
Y'all ain't gonna show out and make me laugh on this app for all that. I'm trying to be, professional. Listen, I want to ask this question.
You can't be diplomatic, Reverend. This family. You can't be diplomatic with family.
I can't. I want to ask this question, and please continue to answer as honest as you have been answering. What does the future of the Black church look like in 5 years, i.e. preaching, ministry, outreach, and leadership? And the reason why I'm asking 5 years is because we've done a C job in handling this pandemic.
we've done a C job in our response to the need of being virtual. We still have many, many churches who have not embraced technology. I was listening to a Zoom conversation the other day, and persons are saying, you know, a year now into this pandemic, I heard a preacher and a pastor say, we're still learning how to do this. No, you shouldn't be learning how to do this. We are a year in. You should have already encouraged your members to get over your fear of Facebook Live and Zoom, and you should have already done some teaching and some training. We're a year in. So if we haven't embraced the connectedness of being virtual now, we're never going to embrace the future of the Black church 10, 20 years from now. So what is the future of the Black church? And again, jump in where you fit in.
Don't nobody want to go first.
I'm trying to let ladies y'all go first.
So what does the future of the Black church look like in 5 years? Preaching, ministry, outreach, and leadership. I would hope it looks like small groups, to be honest. I know, and I attend. I love my church. I do. And I think that churches, mega churches, could be more like the conference that people go to. But I really think that if we are going to grow the body, grow the kingdom, there has to become some more intimacy. Now, in our big old church, I never feel like it's a big old church. When other people hear me say I'm a member of my church, they're like, oh, that's a mega church. And I'm like, no, it's not, but it is. And I get it. But there has to be some intimacy that has to occur in order to sustain the church as we know it. In order to sustain the Black church, we have to create some intimacy. So ministry has to change. There has to be more small group Bible study, something that I have in like 35 minutes, right? There has to be small group Bible study. There has to be intentional outreach. Leadership and leadership training must expand, and it must be a constant. So like when you're an educator, you have continuing education. A person who's a lawyer, they have CLEs, right? They have continuous legal education. There has to be some continuous leadership training, and not just, well, these are our 5 tenets for this year that we're going to address, and we're going to meet on these dates. No, it has to be significant, intentional, ongoing training of our leadership. And the same type of trainings that we offer our leaders, we also need to offer it to those in the pews, because they too are leaders. And that's something that we don't hear enough from the top. I'm very fortunate. My current pastor and my forever pastor, Pastor A.B. Sutton Jr., you know, they've always taught us that you too are a leader in the ministry, because what you do ministers to other people. You're how people find Christ. And so we have to instill those things into our members and empower them as leaders in their own right. So we give them the tools that they need. We have to make, and I'm going to keep saying it, and Josh has said it, we have got to make Bible study a priority, being in that word. I can tell when I'm off balance, literally, I'm not in my word. Like, and there's a hunger. That's just like, you ever crave something healthy that you ordinarily wouldn't want, but your body needs a certain nutrient? That's the way it is when you get away from the word. Once you taste the word and you get away from the word, you kind of like crave it, right? And so we have to teach people to be in the word. You don't have to be what they call a holy roller, but you do need to be a person who is well-versed in the word, who's not afraid of the word, who's not afraid to use the word. You know, I think that is how we sustain the church 5 years from now. But the way it's going to look 5 years from now is we're seeing that right now in this pandemic.
I think I would jump in and say my hope for the Black church in the next 5 years is that we are in this, I don't know, I'll say it anyway. my hope for the Black church is that we are less and less connected to Western theology. I think there is a renaissance that is happening and a reformation that's kind of happening in the Black church. And it makes us, it doesn't make us religious anymore. It makes us relational. But if we don't engage in the reformation and the renaissance that's happening, we are going to be yesterday's news. And to that point, we can't demand evolution without evolving ourselves. So I hope it looks like us evolving as individuals. I hope it looks like us evolving as a community. And I hope it's moving us away, again, moving us away from that Western theology that we were given. And we're moving to kind of a different space as a people. So that's what I hope the church looks like in the next 5 years.
Go ahead.
For me, mine is short. I think out here on the West Coast in the next 5 years, I'm hoping that the Black church looks more black and brown rather than just black. The demographic out here is a lot less blacks, and hopefully it'll be a little bit more multicultural rather than just a Black church.
Yeah, I would say that to Julie's point, is crucial. I would say that I hope I hope the church looks more like the New Testament model of church, small groups. That's how the church grew. They didn't have buildings. They didn't have a building that they could go to. It was literally from house to house as they broke bread, doing family, doing ministry together. That's my hope. That's my desire. What I think, another hope is that we would also understand that there has to be an evolution from what we say Black church is to now. We must pivot to culture, and the reason why I say that is the world is changing, and if we just say, okay, Black church, we're going to find ourselves to be a fossil. So we have to make a pivot to not just Black church, but what are those experiences? What are those cultural things at our core, right? That we can extract from our Black experience that can be something that goes across the aisle to brown people, to, even to some of our Caucasian brothers who identify with our culture. You know what I'm saying? So I think it has to be cultural based because the world is changing, the world is pivoting. So that's what I hope, and I hope there's more kingdom. I hope we reach more across denomination and organizational lines. It took us decades and 100 years to get to the point where it's okay now. It's okay now for people to preach at other different organizations and denominations. Man, you go 30 years ago, we was fighting each other. Organization was fighting each other. Kojak was fighting apostolics, and Baptist was fighting. Everybody was fighting each other. We've just gotten to the point. It took us forever to get to this point. I hope that the next 5 years that we can do in 5 years, something that should not take us 50 years. So that's my hope.
Man, y'all on it. I was actually thinking the small groups thing because I think what it's going to take to get us there is going to be leaders relinquishing more control and doing, as you said, Julie, more training, development, and being consistent in providing that. So because that's already been said, I guess I had to come up with something else. But I hope the Black church is less produced. Like when I say produce, it feels like a production every time that you have superstars. And I just pray that we get back to a place where the Black church is more personable. Don't get me wrong. I think a pastor I think a pastor should have armor bearers. I don't think a pastor needs 70,000 security members though. Because armor bearers have a specific purpose and they can serve dual purposes. So I'm not fighting that. But I think we have to get to a place where it's less, it just seems like it's too popular and it's too produced of a product. Let's get back to relationships. Let's get back to doing kingdom. Let's get back to doing God's work. And let's remove all of this pomp and circumstance. And I pray that we're able to honor our traditions while moving forward and creating new experiences.
Listen, all of you have been amazing today. I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be with me today. I really appreciate the connections that we are building. Josh is on Clubhouse. Josh leads some very amazing and provocative conversations, not provocative in a nasty way, provocative in pushing the envelope in some of our thinking and in some of our practices. Juli does the same thing. She has a Bible study that is coming on in just a little while on Clubhouse. All of us join in. We are blessed. We are made the better because of our connection with each other. There are some serious preachers on this stage. There's some serious community activists on this stage. And so I encourage you to get to know these persons. And I hope that this conversation has influenced you, those of you who are listening, to put your trust in the generation that is here. We used to say often that the young people are the future of the church. That is not germane today. We're here. We have educated ourselves. We have proven ourselves. Many of us have gone through some things that some of you are not aware of that has made us better for the work that we love to do, and that is to be of service to God. So once again, Krystal, Josh, Raishera, Juli, and Darius, thank you for being with me today, and trust and believe this will not be the last time. As always, I like to provide a final thought for before we leave today. The Black church is a 400-year resistance movement bathed in struggle and redemption time and time again, made up of flawed individuals whose desire it is to live out its understanding of faith and God as they understand God. I love the Black church as it is. Through our differences, failures, and times of national scrutiny and embarrassment, we've shown the richness of our faith and the evidence of God's forgiveness at work within us, proving our worth and dignity to be better than we were yesterday. It will undoubtedly take all of us working together under the auspices of faith, patience, and understanding to achieve the goal of Ephesians 4:15 and 16. Love should always make us tell the truth. Then we will grow in every way and be more like Christ, the head of the body. Christ holds it together and makes all of its parts work perfectly as it grows and becomes strong because of love. This has been Conversation with Faith Leaders. My name is Brandon A.J. Davis, founder of Content Writing Service and Conversation with Faith Leaders. And I invite you to join us on next Sunday, March 20th. Not next Sunday, but the Sunday next, March 28th, as we honor the Reverend Dr. Jeremiah A. Wright with a very special conversation. And so until then, stay safe and be blessed.